application form. It seems like kind of just, you got them from a breeder. He had some like baseline training from Ultimate Canine or something.
Big lot of training.
Correct.
Training.
Yeah. And then I guess he's kind of fell back on that, or?
Yeah, so we got him when we had him trained at Ultimate Canine until he was about 20 some weeks. And he was trained as a therapy dog from there, and he came to us with like 25 commands and more than that, and like was amazing. But I had never touched a dog before. I didn't speak dog even a little bit. So when she was like showing us how to do everything, I was like taking it in, but not really. And I think it took a good year before we were like comfortable, like I guess feeling like I knew him, I guess. And I think that also at the beginning he had all those commands that I didn't really know how to reinforce them, or I'd be like, well, I never have to tell him to be quiet because he never barks, so how do I reinforce the quiet?
Correct.
And I kind of just still don't really understand how to reinforce the behaviors that I'm looking for.
Okay.
I'll take him on the walk, and right now, I mean, the biggest ones I just want are heel and to sit when I stop, which he listens to me the most in the house. But when we're like out and about in an unfamiliar place, I can't get him to heel or do any of those things, and even the treat isn't alluring to him. So I guess, yeah, like he had a lot of commands. They just weren't reinforced. I still don't really quite understand how to reinforce them, and I feel like I have very little control over him when we're outside of our house. And he's a great dog,
sure.
But when we got him, he was like so.
Right, because they had been, I get what you're saying.
He did everything that would have been asked of him, and now I just have no idea how to get back there.
And I'm sorry, how old is he again?
He is 3.5.
Okay. Anything on your end?
No, I don't, not necessarily. I think what she said makes sense. I mean, I think we have to solve our expectations, I think in the house, we just want him to be kind of like a good boy and play with the kids, and he did that, and so, but now he's pretty heavy on the leash and stuff. And so trying to get a little more control there would be great.
Sure. Have you had dogs before or no?
No.
Okay.
We had never touched a dog, either of us.
Okay.
We have 4 kids also who, they don't help with keeping training consistent either, because they're all saying different things and doing different things and taking treats to lure here and there, so it's.
Correct.
That's
So a lot of inconsistencies.
Yes.
How old is the oldest?
14.
And the youngest?
6.5.
Okay. All right, anything else I should know?
Sometimes I think he looks depressed.
Okay, when do you feel this?
Well, he's not he likes his space and his alone time, and I try to get him to sit on top of me and watch a show or something, and he just constantly goes to goes away, which is kind of like our kids too, so it's not he kind of fits in the family, but but sometimes he just is he's so content to just be sitting around, so content, and I don't know.
And he is.
Right, and he might be, but then that's when we're like, he looks sad. And I'm like, I think he's sad, but he's just not, he's just content.
And then those are the moments that you're thinking he's depressed, but really he's just off in his own space.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you're correct, he is content.
Yeah.
And I'll explain all that stuff and kind of just close the gap on any things that we're misreading, because that's a big thing now is people are misinterpreting dog behavior.
Sure.
Which is why I'm trying to do more to just educate people.
Yeah.
Because with social media nowadays, it's created a very unrealistic and unhealthy expectation of dogs. Sure. That all dogs should be happy-go-lucky, loving, love everyone, everything, want to be in your space all the time, just like all this, just like a teddy bear that exudes love. And it's not at all how it is. Okay. So I think you have a good dog. I think you have a very good dog. And I think the fact that he goes off in his own space is actually very healthy. Okay. It is him being content. Okay. You want one thing, he wants another thing. Right. Right. And if we think of a relationship, because that's what this is a relationship, a relationship with a different species. But let's look at a relationship with 2 people. I have a girlfriend, and we spend a lot of time together. But there's times I just want to be away, and I'm content, and I'm happy. Right? Me wanting to be away from her, want my own space, does not make me unhappy with her, and vice versa. right? She may want to go and say like, hey, I want to get girls' night out. I'm like, all right, well, have fun.
Sure.
You know, I want to be here and I want to watch TV.
Right. We get that.
Yeah, so that's the same thing, but dogs, if you look at the things that they could do, eat, use the bathroom, sleep, walk, play, mate, mark territory, maybe a couple others.
Yeah.
So that's like 7 things, maybe 10 things that kind of make up their life. For humans, we read, we go biking, we go running, go to the gym, go shopping, have a conversation, text someone, TikTok, Instagram,
Right.
Facebook, right? We have all these things that kind of make up what our daily life is. And I think people kind of think that of the dog as well, like they need all this stuff.
Right.
When dogs really are very simple creatures.
Okay.
When we talk about the obedience stuff, that's of course one thing, but behaviorally, you know, your dog's not depressed, and I see him here, he's curious, he's just checking it out, and he's like, oh, what's this room, you know, and all that stuff. But yeah, so don't, if he's looking for his own space, don't feel like you need to reel him in, and don't feel like you need to go in there either. Okay. And I think with your kids, because maybe they may see that the same way, like, oh, he's over there, let me go keep him company and stuff, right?
Right.
Is also teaching your children to recognize that. Okay, because you want to think that the way your children treat your dog is how they will treat other dogs. So let's say they go to a friend's house, and that friend happens to have a dog. I'm not saying that dog gets fine with kids, but doesn't like kids they don't know in their personal space.
Sure.
And your kid goes, oh, he's over in his own space, kind of like Flint. Let me go keep him company, like I would do for Flint. But it doesn't go well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The dog may be fine with it with the household kids, but when it comes to other kids, it doesn't always translate well, correct? So just keep that in mind as, you know, first-time dog owners, that the way you teach your kids to treat Flint is how they will treat other dogs.
Right.
So if they can go into Flint's personal space, even to hug him at a whim, they will do that to a dog on the street potentially, unless you've been teaching boundaries.
No,
Perfect.
they've all been so scared of dogs their whole life except for Flint. So
Gotcha.
that's kind of why we went so overboard on everything, just because we had never had experience with a dog, our kids were scared of dogs. We just wanted to like have the best opportunity for success.
Okay, well that's good. I mean, I don't want to be scared of dogs, but at the same time,
Sure.
I want to be cautious of dogs, because a lot of kids, you'd be surprised, like, you know, we used to train at Oz Park during the summertime.
Oh, sure.
And I was working with a client whose dog was friendly, by the way. And I saw these 2 kids with a golden doodle puppy running, beelining across Oz Park, and I knew they were coming to us. And sure enough, they come running up and I go, no.
Right.
We're not going to say hi to your dog, right? And I was very blunt and rude about it. And the kids were taken aback, okay? And they went off and they looked somewhere else.
Right.
Okay? Now the reason why I was blunt and rude about it was because I wanted to make it a negative experience. Because one, they were very young children, running across Oz Park, which is a very large park, to complete strangers to socialize their dog. Right? So there's not just a dog part where the dog meets a bad dog, right, or an aggressive dog, and that's a problem, but also that just children were just running up to anybody and everybody. And I was like, I'm gonna do this because I don't want you to do this because it's not safe.
Right.
And it's funny because we saw them again on a different day. And I was working with another client, and they completely bypassed because they recognized, you know. So I wish we would have sank it a little more, and they weren't just running up to everybody. But yeah, you know, things like that, unfortunately, cause for bad things to happen.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like the obedience and stuff here with Flint, that's the easier part. Depending on, I'm assuming you did research on this before booking this consultation, and you know the methods that we use and how we train. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's how he was trained initially, also.
Okay.
Similarly.
So he was trained on remote or prong collar?
I think so. Definitely a prong collar. He came to us with a prong collar.
Okay.
And they may have used the E collar, like a.
Sure.
When he was a baby. I don't know if they did or not, but they definitely used a prong collar. He came to us with that.
Gotcha. And I'm sorry, how old was he when you got him?
20 weeks, 21 weeks.
5 months? Yeah, sounds about right if you're doing prong. I usually start, if I'm gonna do prong, the youngest I really go is like 4.5, 5 months.
Oh, okay.
Usually it's around 6 months.
When he came to us, he had a prong collar, and they described it like just a policeman walking behind him to make sure he always.
I like the analogy.
Is on.
Yes.
And then so I always used the prong with him. And truly until I would say the past 6 months, every time I stopped walking, he would sit with me, and he still does sometimes. But the prong, felt like I ended up like just yanking the prong harder and harder, and he got kind of immune to the prong.
Correct. So that's not uncommon. So the prong is meant to mimic a dog bite. Okay, that's why it looks the way it looks. It's meant to mimic, the dog correcting Flint go out of line. Now, I know that they probably told you the 25 commands he knows. Did they review with you the 25 commands and like how to use a collar to correct them, or did they just say this is what he knows?
So they spent 2 days with us.
Okay.
Going through each command and like modeling how to do it.
Okay.
And yes, like he wore a leash for a long time in the house that we would, but again, like once they left, I felt really like, what if I'm not near him and I'm cooking at the sink and he's doing something he shouldn't do? How do I do it? And then it's too late because it's, it's not immediate. And so, and again, some of the commands, like quiet, for example, he never barked, he never did anything. So I didn't know how to practice that command. The commands really that we used all the time that I still use are heel, place, down, sit, stay, leave it. A lot of his other commands were for like getting dressed in his therapy vest or sets.
Oh, sure.
He had a command that was settle, so that we could like, if I needed him to be still, but I didn't ever need the command because he would be so still.
Sure,
So I didn't really know how to use them, if that makes sense. So we went through the whole process, but again, we had never been in the presence of a dog in our house or really touched a dog. So it was a lot of information for us.
Yep.
And
in 2 days.
In 2 days, and just
I
didn't really take it in, and I'm wishing, I think I needed to be more trained. He was very, very trained, but we just didn't really know what we were doing as much.
Gotcha.
And the trainer would say, like, only call his name once. Only say come once. But it was like, well, what do I do if he's not coming and then he's running and then what? And then it's like, we just yell his name, and then the kid's like, there's a lot of competing forces.
So what happened was, it looks like they, of course they gave you as much information as they could, but then you come across those gaps. Right? You're like, if he's over there and I'm over here and he doesn't, and I need to correct him, and I get there and he stops, what do I do?
Right, exactly.
So, so there's 6 functional commands. Basic obedience commands, family pack commands, sit, stay, down, come, play, steal.
Okay.
Right, which were like almost pretty much
all
the commands you just listed, right? So those are the ones that I teach.
Okay.
Everything else is kind of just icing on the cake. Like, do I know more advanced stuff? I do. I have a gentleman that's going to come right after you who's learning very advanced training with his dog.
Okay.
But he's like the 3rd or maybe 5th person in 10 years that's gone that far.
Sure.
Most people just go, I want a good dog that's social, not aggressive, and doesn't pull a lot in the leash and comes when I call him. Right, doesn't jump on people or whatever.
Right.
That's like the ceiling for most dogs is fairly low.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because most people who have that actually don't even really worry about training their dog,
Right.
or at least training them to the extent that we train dogs, because they don't have any real issues there. So I think for definitely being for first-time dog owners, and of course being thrown into obedience. And all this information is just in one ear and out the other, not because you didn't want to retain it, but just because it was like information overload. It's like, how do you retain all that stuff? And then when you're not using it, right? So I would actually just kind of simplify things and just go like, just focus on the foundation, or not the foundation, but the family pet stuff, right? The functional stuff.
Right.
Because what probably happened is, since they did so much training and reinforcement, by default, he does certain things already, right? So when you said like, oh, they told us to tell him to settle, but he's fine. Like,
He's so chill,
right? So it's either his temperament, the training, or both, right? So like, we train a lot of things by default. So like, if I brought my pit in here and I just like sat down, she would automatically just lay down and fall asleep with no commands, because she's like, we're in a resting state. Okay, and just chill, right? And that's just been trained into her because she's 9 now, and I've had her since she was 3 months.
Okay.
As a default, when I'm not doing anything, you're not doing anything, so she goes, I want you to take a nap, and they go, that's fine by me.
Right.
Okay? So it kind of sounds like that.
Yeah.
The no bark thing, or the fact of him not barking, typically if a dog's gonna bark, it comes around 6 months or a year.
Okay.
So if he's just like, it can happen when there's just a dog who's just not a barker.
Now he barks.
Now he barks.
Not a lot.
Okay.
But, like when, like a service provider comes in.
Sure.
He barks at the beginning and then we get him to stop and he'll stop, but
Okay.
he barks at the beginning. Or sometimes he'll see a dog out the window. Since COVID, he's been very like looking for other dogs all the time. And this is a new thing, I think, in the past years where he like barks when he sees some dogs pass, but not often. I wouldn't say often.
Okay.
Would you say he barks often?
Nope.
And then you said that you've noticed an escalation since COVID.
Just of like him looking for dogs and wanting to, like what's happened to me since COVID is when we're out on walks, well, first he doesn't get a lot of socialization at all because he's just at home with us, so not with other dogs. And people walk to the other side of the street now, and so he doesn't get that play like he used to when we were on walks. He started like stopping when he would see a dog. He would just stop dead in his tracks. And I could never get him to, I would use the command, let's go, let's go, let's go, and he would stay stopped in his tracks, and I would just have to yank and yank. And sometimes he would stay stopped in his tracks looking at me, and sometimes when the dog passed, he would like kind of bark out. Right, you'd be like, hey, what is that? That's not you. No, we don't see that from you. So he does that occasionally.
Okay. All that stuff makes sense. It's nothing out of the ordinary. And then when did you switch into a harness?
Just 6 months ago, probably.
Okay.
Just because I was looking for something that he would stay closer to me on the leash, and this one has like a double up, and my sister-in-law used it, and so it was great. And so it works. He doesn't pull quite as bad as opposed to the prong collar or just the regular thing here, which I felt like I was always choking him because I was constantly.
Yeah, rearing back.
You know.
Yeah.
Yes.
So so that's on the leash and stuff. That's what we call reactivity.
Okay.
Reactivity doesn't make for an aggressive dog. Like it can be a temper tantrum, like, hey, like I want to play with you. If it's inside the home, he's saying, hey, this is our home. I'm here, just letting you know. It's communication. So it's nothing bad. You can definitely stop it though, however, if you don't want it.
Right.
Okay. So, questions so far about any of this stuff? So what I would do here is essentially just train you as if like there was no training. Okay, because there's a gap or like a learning gap. Like you've learned obviously a lot because you've had them for so long in terms of dog behavior and stuff, but learning about how dogs truly learn and pressure. Are you familiar with pressure work? No. So when you had the prong collar, did you ever pull up on his neck and push down on his butt to make him sit?
I would just pull up on his neck. I didn't ever
You
push
didn't put down the butt. Okay. So when you pulled up on his neck, you would pull up and eventually that butt would come down, correct?
Right.
And then I'm assuming you would let the leash go or let the slack go.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pressure.
Okay.
You pulled up on the neck, which creates a biting pressure. And then once he complies and gives you what you want, which in this case is a sit, you let it go. Okay, so it's pressure on, and then once he complies, pressure off. So that's pressure work. So we do the same thing, but we do it with remote collar. Now we do prong collar as well, but I only incorporate prong collar. I don't use it as a solo training program anymore. Okay, because of what you said earlier, that at some point he kind of became desensitized or immune to it, right? Which can happen, not because like the dog's just getting tough, but dogs bite each other. That's their primary form of like discipline, right? Is if Flint were to get out, if he were to get out of line with another dog, you might see that dog nip or bite at him. That does not make that dog aggressive. That dog is simply saying, hey, don't do that to me, okay? But people see that and sometimes it gets misread as aggression. So like with the prong collar, because it's not gonna puncture your dog's neck, okay? And if you were to really crank on it, you can only go so far, okay? So if he's doing something that's like, let's say a level 20 behavior, and you come in and the harshest you can do is a 10. 10 will never match 20.
Right.
So then you're stuck with not being able to control that behavior. Does that make sense? Because you're 10 levels apart. So e-collar, the reason why I train with e-collar, solely e-collar, is because it's the only tool that can guarantee that I can override the dog. I can match the dog no matter the size or strength of the person. One of my most common examples is I had a young lady who was like 90 pounds, and she had a 150-pound Great Dane. And she had him on both a prong collar and an e-collar because she was only 90 pounds to his 150 pounds, right? And he was dog reactive. So if she saw a dog, he would start lunging and barking. So then for her, she needed the leverage of the prong collar, but then the e-collar allowed her to also override him, even though he was a much bigger animal. Make sense? When I worked with plenty of clients who've never worked with dog or had a dog before. It's real easy to pick up on. He's obviously already got 25 commands. We can focus on the 6 or whatever ones that you're wanting. And chances are he's going to learn very quickly because he's actually already got a really good concept of the commands. He's actually already been worked with pressure, which is prong collar. We're just transferring it to a different tool that's going to be more reliable. Okay? And it doesn't require you to know a whole lot of technical skill with the leash. Okay? It's very intuitive, it's very just like logic based, and it's super simple. All it is once we find Flint's, what we call his working number, right away what you're most likely going to see is everything's going to kick in. All the obedience stuff that he knows, even out in public, in the street or in a distracting environment. Because the problem is, like, let's say Flint's great in the neighborhood and in the home, and then you go for a walk over at Alice Park, right? More distracting, obviously not going to listen, even if you start correcting with the prong collar. With the e-collar, if his number were to be 25, for example, in the neighborhood, and he's perfect, then he's perfect at 25. But then when you go to Alice Park, and there's more stuff going on, maybe you have to jump it to 45. And now you can match or override the environment. Does that make sense?
And this is how he gets trained, or that's how he has that on him forever?
Only when you need it. Okay, so when they said, think of the prong collar as a policeman walking behind them, that's actually the same analogy that I use. Do you guys drive? Do you go on the expressway? Do you go the speed limit?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Do you know why I say that?
No.
Because most people don't go the speed limit.
Right.
Right? Like almost everybody says they don't go the speed limit. So I tell them, like, but you know, you're human. You're aware that there's a speed limit that says don't go past 70.
Right,
but you still go past 70, right? Because, and then when you see a squad car, and all of a sudden everybody slows down, right?
Right.
Because now there's a consequence. Same thing for dogs.
Got it.
Okay, so what they said with that prong is like, oh, now there's the cop is around, right? But
Right.
again, prong is limited. So prong is like a security officer who can't, like they can have a taser, but they don't have a gun. But a police officer has a gun, right, and a taser. They have more available to them to detain you, right? Same thing for dogs. E-collar is what I call the cop on the collar. When it's present, he's gonna know, okay, we're outside, the collar's on, I have to behave better because his tool is on, right? Also, he's a dog. A very common kind of misconception is people think, I'm gonna train my dog or get my dog trained by someone, and then they come out and they're gonna be a good dog. That's not how it works. They're a good dog because you make them be a good dog. They're a good dog because you're reinforcing rules and boundaries, right? Much like children. You can't just tell your kid one thing one day and expect it to resonate forever. You're gonna be reminding them, through consequence and groundings and taking away things. I was raised old school, I was spanked. And I was spanked for let's say I was stealing cookies out the cookie jar when I shouldn't have. Several times before I finally gave up stealing cookies out the cookie jar, right? It's the same thing for dogs. Except dogs don't ever come to know things like a human would. Like we know it's don't go 80 in the 70 zone. We know that. He would not ever know that. He won't go out thinking like, oh, we're going for a walk. I know to walk at my owner's side and not be a problem. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's more so you go outside, he's got a collar on, then he goes, oh, I know with this tool, you can make me behave. So I'm gonna opt to be compliant because I don't want the consequence.
Is there anything like, again, when we walk around our street,
mm-hmm.
like in the neighborhood, he can be so good.
Mm-hmm.
And if he does pull or stop or whatever, he pulls a lot still, but like I can rein him in.
But we don't want to rein dogs in. That's not how we train.
Right.
When we say heel, the heel, because you're giving gray area, and that's the problem that most people have. Is like I said earlier, people just want a dog that's not aggressive, is social, right? Doesn't pull a whole lot.
Right.
Right? I actually said that.
Yeah.
And when we do training, heel is not about how much the dog is not pulling. Heel is a very strict command. It's right shoulder to left leg, no tension in the leash, and I don't care what the environment is. And the sit is automatic. So it's all built into the command.
Right.
It's a bigger package. Whereas most people go like, oh, I just don't want the dog to pull. And they go, the dogs are either pulling or not pulling. There's no in between. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you might say like, well, my neighbor's dog walks without not pulling that much. I go, but that just happens to be your neighbor's dog, right? It's not, if you looked at all dogs across the board, you would find that would be a very small percentage, like super, super small, that they're just kind of trailing along, and then when they feel pressure, they kind of just hang back, but they're still in front of the owner, you know? And I've seen dogs as big as like Rotties walk like that, but it's a very small percentage. Like you said with him, about like the being chill, putting on the vest and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I said, it could either just beat him,
Right.
the training they did, or both, right? A lot of dogs don't sit still for putting on the vest, you know? And obviously they would need active training to work on that stuff.
Like
So,
he is super chill and super good. He's such a well-behaved dog. You know, it's just the few. It's really when we're like out of our comfort zone or anywhere else.
which, I mean.
Which makes sense because I don't take him those places.
Yeah, so then look at it this way. Like, let's say in a neighborhood, you like the way he walks, then you wouldn't use it there.
Right.
You would use it when you go to Oz Park, or like, you know, if you go to a road trip and he's gonna be off leash or something, right? Then you would use it then. In my book, we always use it when we're outside. And the reason why I do that is because you can't account for life. I had somebody walking their dog over by Belmont and Broadway in Lakeview. He had his dog in the stroller and he had his dog in the leash. And a bicycle, as he was walking, crashed behind him. His dog got scared, jumped up and booked it, pulled the leash out of his hand, took off. And they couldn't find the dog for like, I think like a day or two. So he kind of chased it out because he had the kid in the stroller, right? I got caught twice here in Logan Square walking my dog
First
through the
time
boulevard.
there.
First time there, yeah.
If it was the second kid, you go over the dog.
So here in my pit hates fireworks.
Fireworks?
Yeah, she hates fireworks. She wants to run, right? I was walking through Logan Square. I had my dogs on a leash. They weren't on their e-collars because they weren't going to be off leash. It was just a stroll. It was August, October, and it's happened to me twice.
Boom.
Yeah, and then the entire time home,
Freaked out.
you know, and I couldn't do anything about it because I didn't have a tool. I couldn't override.
Interesting. There's a lot of times like we have friends who have a lake house, and I feel like when we go visit, it's not fenced in, and I like leave Flint inside because I don't trust him to not run away, or I put him on a tree, you know, with the thing, and they're like, let him off the leash, and I'm like, he'll find a squirrel and like run off. I don't know. So that's interesting. I never understood like, well, how do you
Get to that level.
Yeah.
And this is where, you know, so Prong is a great tool. So we have, if we simplify it, we have food only, we have Prong and gentle leader, and then we have e-collar. Okay, food only has the lowest percentage of success. We're talking single digits, because you have to have the right dog with the right personality that's food driven, that doesn't care much about the environment, plus an owner who's going to be consistent and to take hours a day to train and years. Okay, it's a lot of requirements for that to actually be successful. Prong collar gentle leader, much higher success rate, 40 to 60%, but then you're stuck when you remove the leash, because now again, there's no guarantee, can I make my dog return? E-collar is the only tool that can guarantee as close to 100% reliability, because you have control on or off leash. Okay, and that's why I just train with that tool, because if someone's coming to me and says, hey Jesse, I want my dog to do this, and I know this is the one tool that's going to get me to that percentage of success, why would I offer anything else? Okay, so here, you're only using it when you need it, right? So when you go to your friend's house and you're like, yeah, you don't have to tether him, because it allows more freedom.
Right.
Because not only do you know how to use it, and he's been trained, and that ideally we don't even see that happen.
Right.
You have a
But
means
it's
to make
there
a
just in
return
case.
in case something happens, and that has happened to people.
Right.
You know, the firework, like that's happened to me here, but that's happened to clients whose dog actually took off.
Yeah.
Because they were at the park with their dogs playing with their friends off leash.
Right.
You know how people designate.
I mean, it's funny because when we see people, some of the people in my neighborhood will drop the leash and let them just play, and I always hold on to the leash still while he's playing because, again, if a bunny hops on by, I don't know that he won't go chasing that bunny.
Correct. And we can, how do you say, I train for real life.
Right.
Okay, that's why like when in the summer and spring, like once spring comes back, and we can train at Oz Park. Again, we're gonna be back at Oz Park because it's so busy.
Right.
There was dogs, people, rollerbladers, skateboarders,
Yeah.
baseball games. Everything was going on at Oz Park, and the dogs are learning their obedience in this crazy distracting environment.
Right.
So that's what we're training for, so that you have the ability to like, all right, take the leash off, let my dog play. right? And if I see a rabbit and he sees the rabbit, well, one, I could stop him if needed, but also he shouldn't be impulsive to where he would just do that,
We
okay?
trained him to not be.
Correct, because he's got that cop on, so he's gonna think twice about that temptation there, okay? And of course, he is a dog. Humans make mistakes, dogs will make mistakes as well. But now you have as close to 100% control as you can get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Other questions?
Does it hurt him?
It's a miniaturized TENS unit. So it's, they use technology in humans. It's just a muscle contraction, okay? So it's uncomfortable. The higher you go, the more uncomfortable it does become. Have you ever seen those videos where they recreate labor contraction pains in men?
It's just pressure. I mean, it's not pain.
No.
That's what they say during labor.
That's what they say during labor for us natural childbirthers.
Oh, really?
Just pressure.
Just pressure, not pain. When they say to you, if you're going natural and they say, are you in pain? You're supposed to say, pressure, pressure. Don't mention the pain. It's pressure.
Well, I mean, yeah, pressure is discomfort. So growing up, we had peer pressure, right? Which is, we're gonna bully you and make you uncomfortable to get you to do something.
I mean, it was a joke. It's pain.
Yeah. But we think of that as well as pressure. Like that's actually something that we talk about.
Yeah.
Because people think about pain, right? They think about, oh, I'm hurting my dog. So like, okay, I was raised old school. I was spanked. Someone could say like, oh, your mom hit you. And I would say, no, she spanked me. Like I don't view it as being hit.
Right.
Right? Because hit is like a different thing. And then I'm like, no, I was spanked, like I was disciplined, and like it was for a reason. And that's why I don't do certain things, right? It's the same thing for dogs, because dogs bite each other. It doesn't make them aggressive. That's how they spank themselves. That's how they spank their puppies, is just through biting. And e-collar, like the Prong collar, is meant to mimic. I call it a bite on a button. So when I press that button, we get a muscle contraction, okay? And our collar goes 0 to 127. Cheaper collars go to like 0 to 10. 10 and 127 are the same, but I have 117 more divisions now. Okay, so 1 to 10 has bigger jumps. So ours are very refined.
Okay.
So 50 is too high, 40 is too low, 44, 46, 45. I can really dial in. And it may sound complicated, and especially if you're kind of new to it, it's super simple. Once you understand the logic, it's very straightforward.
And Flint wears a collar 24 hours a day?
No, only when you need it. So if he's a great dog inside the house, you don't need it. Right? But if you're gonna go for a walk and you don't want to have to deal with the pulling and stuff, you have it on. If you're gonna go to the park to play with his dog friends and you want to actually take him off the leash and let him be a dog, you need it. If you're gonna go to your friend's backyard and you don't want, Flint getting too rowdy with the children, you can want to tame them down, because it can also, you have obedience function, but you also have communication. So let's say the kids are running around and Flint gets very excited and he's like running around as well. And starts to get a little jumpy, and maybe one of the kids doesn't like the jumpiness, you can use the collar to correct the jumpiness to calm him down, where he'll still play,
He'll still be there.
but he just won't be jumping. Because you would do what another dog would do, and nip him, and say like, hey, don't jump. And you go, okay, and then he'd continue with the interaction. But then you'd also have Flint down. He does that no matter what's going on. Okay, so you have different ways of addressing it, and I educate you, and I tell you like, you do what you want to do. You have options available to you. What you decide is completely up to you.
Right.
Okay. Inside the home for like the barking stuff, I would give you or educate you on other ways of correcting him, so that you don't become reliant on the collar. Let's say you're going to have a bunch of guests come over for a family dinner or something, and Flint is a little barky in the beginning, or he jumps on people. Put the collar on. Now we need it inside the home for the 2 to 3 hours the guest would be there. Or sometimes it's only on for the first 30 minutes and the dog is cool, then you remove the collar, then you're good to go. Okay? So you pick and choose. My whole thing is, outside I always tell people put it on, because like you can't account for a bike crashing behind you and spooking the dog, or someone blowing up a firework randomly, in the middle of the year.
Right.
Other questions?
One of the things, when he would, if in daycare, because I'm gonna sign him up for some daycare, because I think it's so great for him to be with the other dogs, but if he does those pack walks or activities, would he wear that collar?
If needed. So the pack walk, no.
Okay.
So the pack walks, right now we're not doing them because of the web.
Sure.
What we do now is treadmill time.
Okay.
So the way we structure our daycare is, so we have playtime, which is exciting activity. We have place or duration work, which is mental activity. Then we have treadmill time, which is physical focused activity. And then there's kennel time, which is just rest time, so that they can decompress.
Okay.
And then, like, let's say you did the training and you brought him in with his collar. We would reinforce everything, okay? But then if it's like we're not going to be doing anything with him, he'd have his collar off, he'd be resting in the kennel, he's got a break. If he's a great player in the playpen and we don't ever have any issues with him, he wouldn't need it there because he's not a dog that needs to be corrected. So we're kind of the same way here. We're like, if we need it or we have a dog that we don't need it, then we incorporate it. Now, if we're doing work with the dog that's like board and train, that's different because that dog is training almost the entire time they're here. They're wearing that collar all the time because it's a lot of active work. The pack walk, if he's a great walker on the leash, we're trained, like my employees are trained to the level that they can handle a number of dogs and not need to have an e-collar on them.
Yeah.
But some of the dogs we do take, we know need them because they're a special dog, right? So that just depends on Flint. Activities is when we're training him around other dogs, right? So then we have it on because yes, we're trying to prove something. Like if you're like, hey, his recall's kind of sloppy around dogs. Well, when we have him in the playpen, we're going to practice on the recall. And of course, we need that tool in order to make it, help transfer that over.
Okay. So in the daycare, they reinforce the commands that we do.
Yeah. So we get dogs that are even trained by us, but they're trained on e-collar, and we reinforce it. Because it actually makes our life easier. Right? Because if the dog's trained, we're like, yes, bring a trained dog here, because that makes everything so much easier as opposed to an untrained dog.
Right.
And we're only reinforcing stuff that he gives us. You know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
If we walk with him and he knows heel, we're using the heel, and when we stop, let's say he forgot to sit, we would use the collar to reinforce it.
Got it.
Okay? So yeah, so if he's like forgetting something or if like something gets a little sloppy, we work on it throughout the day as we have them because it's not extra work on us.
Sure.
It just reinforces what you're doing. So then, because some people complain that they take their trained dog to a daycare, they do whatever they want all day. Then when they get the dog at the end of the day, it's like a kid, like someone giving your kid on sugar, right? They take care of them for you, and they're like, yeah, I gave him a bunch of brownies and candy today. And you're like,
I
oh.
always thought it was so weird that, I mean, we've only been to 2 places, but they just go to the bathroom anywhere inside the place.
Yeah, and we take them out here.
So weird.
It still happens because, you know, they're dogs.
Sure.
But we take them out, so we get puppies too.
Okay.
We had one dog that they were like, she would never potty train, but then as soon as they took her here, they said within the week, she was fine. It's like, yeah, because we have a schedule here. We don't just let them pee everywhere.
Right.
You know, so then that also just undoes potty training for puppies and stuff, so.
What is the, when you say like you recommend to do the basic, commands, is it training with him and me? How does it work?
Yes. So it's all verbal instruction now, so you're doing everything hands-on. I'm there with you, but I'm coaching you through everything, okay? It's once a week for an hour. We have our space here, which is like 13,000 square feet. We have some people still working outside, right? So we switched from Oz Park to Palmer Square, just because Oz being off the lakefront is getting really cold now. So we also have the option of training outside, but we don't have, outside isn't a big deal. That's why I tell people right now, because no one's outside.
Right.
You know, it's cold now. So in the summertime, I would say, yeah, for sure, let's train at Oz Park because you're gonna have a lot of distractions. So we have a couple of options there. We do inside or outside. We're still doing home to home, but it's at a different rate now.
Okay.
If I go to someone's house, it's more expensive because people are traveling to me now.
Okay.
Before I used to travel to you.
Got it.
I used to travel all over the city
Okay.
to all my clients, but then COVID hit and we had to like change the way we do everything.
Okay.
So now all my clients come here. So for me to go to a client
That's fine.
costs more because it's taking me out of where I normally work now.
Sure.
So that's also an option as well. Some people have the concern of like, well, if I do the training here, will it transfer to where I live? And they go, yes, if you understand and go with the logic. So if we work here and Flint's number is 20 out of 127 because it's an indoor setting, he's familiar with it, blah, 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 blah. Then you go to another park and there's 20 dogs running around. 20 may not be enough to override the distraction of 20 dogs.
Right.
So then that just means we bump the number, right, to make it mean something. And then, okay, in that environment, it's 35. Okay? So it's really just logic. Once you understand the concepts, it's just adjusting to the situation.
Okay. And it is, so it's once a week for an hour, for how long does it?
For the length of your program.
Okay.
So if you do, so I have 3, 6, 9, and 12 week programs. You're in the 6 to 12 range. The 3-week program is for dogs that are reactive, that pull on the leash really bad, and that's all the owner cares about, okay? If you care about getting functional obedience, or like the stuff that we know he already knows, and just tightening that up so it's like it doesn't, you're not having to worry about, oh, he's great here, but here, when there's a lot more going on, he's not so great, right? We want him to make great across the board. There's 6, 9, and 12. So if you did 6, it'd be 1 hour for 6 weeks.
Okay.
If you did 12, 1 hour over 12 weeks.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so. I learned a lot today. Interesting. Is this itinerary today? What was our plans?
Yeah, right?
Cool.
So,
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I don't know. You tell me. Yeah. Yeah, cool.
I don't think I have any other questions.
Okay.
What is the difference? So I know you mentioned something, you said you have a board and train too. I think that's not something I'd be, so if we ever wanted to board him here, is that something that you would do to like what's the word, reaffirm
Oh, sure, like if you needed it.
if you needed it?
Yeah, so like board and trains are more so like we have a board and train right now. It was actually a client that started training, but then someone passed, so then he had to take a break off of training.
Okay.
But then he has to be over there for a few weeks, so he's like, well, since my training got interrupted, he
Right.
just went to a board and train because he was still trying to get her,
Got
you
it.
know, to do that. And that's where you leave the dog, and we have 24/7, and we train them throughout the day and all that stuff.
Okay.
So like, let's say you did a 6-week program, everything's good, you're happy, and then you're gonna go on a weekend trip for 3 days, and we have also a tune-up.
Okay.
So if we've already trained the dog, you get a board and train tune-up, so that's cheaper per day,
Got it.
because the dog's already trained. But we're going more out of our way to reinforce and train him. Okay, so a regular board, we would still reinforce the training. We would still correct things. We just wouldn't go out our way to work with him on stuff. So like he'd go to a Home Depot or PetSmart on training walks. He would do a lot of duration work. They would do training sessions throughout the day with him.
Okay.
We would, you might tell us like, hey, his recall again is kind of sloppy. Can we tighten that up? Can we make sure we focus on the recall? So then you could do a board and train, or you could just do a regular board.
Got it. Okay.
In terms of training itself, like I would really just say do the training yourselves.
I think I need, yeah.
Yeah, because you're where the gap is, right?
Yeah.
So if you brought him here, we'll tell you like you have a good dog, right? We all know that. It's just you need to learn or be educated on how does training work, how do we apply it, how do we correct it, what do we do when he doesn't do this, right? That's the stuff that you don't know. So that's where I come in, and that's where doing the one-on-one, you learn so much.
Okay.
Okay. In terms of like the training collar, we can send you the information on that. Flint is how big?
51 pounds.
51 pounds, yeah. So you'd be on the dog for 2,300 most likely. You have 2 options. One is meant for 70 pounds and under. One is meant for 70 pounds and over. The only reason why I would say the 70 pounds and over one is because it is a nicer collar. It's rounded. So it's not a big old hulking box here, but he's technically would be fine on either one of them. In terms of the length of time with the 6, 9, and 12, which you can expect to achieve, the 6-week program, we cover the heel, we cover the recall, and then once we get, so that's usually 2 classes and 2 classes, which leaves 5 and 6. So if you're like, hey, we'd like to like make place so that we can go to a restaurant and take Flint and he won't budge, right? We would go over that. If you want to go over all the stuff he knows in terms of the 6 functional commands, that's the 9 to 12 week program, okay?
Now, would the 6-week program give me enough, it would give me enough knowledge for how to, like he knows place. I know he knows place because we use it at home. Would it give me enough knowledge to reinforce that place?
Yeah, we have to cover it, but yes.
Okay.
So like, there's the trifecta of dog training. There's walk with me, which is heel, come to me, which is recall, and then there's go there, don't move, which is place.
Okay.
Okay, walk with me, come to me, don't move. That's trifecta. So there's sit down and place. They're all essentially the same thing, except place is more lenient. Place is just go to that bed, don't move.
Right.
Whereas down would be lay down, don't move, and sit would be put your butt down, don't move, right? Stay is kind of like, for me, it's the least useful command. Because if I say place, I don't say stay. The dog knows not to move. If I say down, I don't say stay, because the dog knows not to move.
Interesting.
Okay? So stay, I teach differently than most people think. Okay? But if you did the 6 classes, we could definitely tighten up the heel. We go over the recall to make sure we have a foolproof recall. And then we go.
That means when you say come, he comes?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, recall does take the longest to teach because it requires you to go somewhere. You gotta go to the park with your dog on a long leash with distractions, okay? So don't think at the end of 6 weeks, he's gonna be a foolproof 100% recall.
Sure.
You'll have the tools to get him there.
Okay.
So if you practice once a week, it's gonna take you months before you get a foolproof recall. If you practice 3 times a day, you're gonna get there pretty quick, right? So that's the only command that really requires you to go do some work, because heel, you walk your dog every day, multiple times a day. That's the fastest, the one that the dogs learn. Place command is really at your own pace. It's so easy to teach and it's so easy to practice, but I think because of that reason, people blow it off. Because like, I can do this whenever, and they forget about it, right? So if I teach it to you and you're practicing it, you're using it actively, you're gonna make progress, okay? So I think with the 6, you would be fine in terms of the education, how to correct things, how to understand his behavior, how to reinforce things, the how dogs learn, the concept of pressure, all that stuff you'll learn, because I get a lot of people that just do the 6 because I simplify it. Heel, super important. Recall, very important. And then of course, don't move.
You're saying whenever we do plays, I have to say stay, and then I'm constantly like, stay.
No, here the dogs, they go in place for 3 hours, they don't move.
Wow.
Yeah, it's we go place, they pop on the bed and they don't move. That's I train to a much higher degree.
I feel like that's how he came to us.
Yeah, because he was with the trainer, and it sounds like they did like a
They work with
training.
them every day.
Yeah.
How much do you think someone would need to work with their dog every day for them to be able to do that? Every day you give them what, 20 minutes, half hour?
On the stuff that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You train as you live your life with him.
Yeah.
So every time you walk him, you're training.
Right, so I think that's where the gap is that I didn't, again, I think that I don't really understand. I need to learn how to work with him or how he learns. I think that was the piece that was missing that I didn't really understand.
Yeah, and so for a lot of people, like, how do I use heel, right? Like, when do I use heel? And I say every time you walk your dog, you use heel. But people usually go by, but it's the dog's time to walk and be a dog. And well, that's not how it actually works.
Right. So I would
That's
use heel,
like a parent.
and then when he
that's not how
keeps
you do
going
it.
away,
Exactly.
and you say heel, then he goes away, and then it's heel, 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 and then the whole
The
walk
kid
was
gets very
like,
confused in that one.
the whole walk was like, heel, heel,
No.
heel.
Have you seen our videos?
I've seen a few of your videos.
Yeah, heel is a good one to watch before the first class lesson one, because no one knows what they're doing. So the way I teach heel is heel once, dog glued to my hip, leash or no leash. Okay. I used to walk my dogs off leash in the South Loop. I used to live on 11th Wabash. Just walk down 11th to Grant Park, all the way down to Lakefront, up the Lakefront, up the river, through downtown and back, no leash.
Wow.
And they were glued to my hip, and I would say heel once. Okay.
Okay.
Most people, because they're not strict, they let things slide. So that's why they have to repeat. And you'll always hear me say, we don't repeat, we just correct. But people want to give the dog the opportunity to make the right decision to avoid the correction. And that's why they struggle. I use every opportunity to administer correction. So the dog goes, I'm not going to get out of line, because that's the only way to avoid the correction. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. I think the struggle often is, well, how do you do the correction if you're not close enough to the dog to do the correction?
Yeah, and I would educate you on that as well. And technically, so let's say he's barking out the window, you're in the kitchen, you say Flint, no bark or whatever, he continues barking and you go to correct him, but he stops barking, you can actually still correct. Yeah, you can still correct because you're still within the context.
Okay.
But I would show you how to go about that.
Right, so I need the training, we need the training.
Yeah.
Our training.
He knows how to be a dog.
Right.
Now, him, how to be a dog in the human world is a different thing. Because barking out the window in his world is not bad.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much. This was really helpful.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, he's a great dog. He's chill.
Yeah.
Very calm, very passive, he's got a good temperament. So he's obviously more than welcome to come back for daycare.
Okay.
And then Maria will get in contact with you. She'll send you the information for everything. And then you just, decide what you want to do.
Okay.
And then you decide to move forward to training. As soon as you have your first class, you can bring him with the equipment. You
Okay.
reinforce everything. If not, he's still welcome to come.
Okay.
Just chill.
Awesome, thank you so much.
No worries.
You learned a ton today, man. Thanks for the information.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm here for.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, the way you laid out that was really easy to understand. And
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, and I've kind of, if you watch all my consultations, it's kind of progressed the same way.
okay.
Because I have a formula now.
Okay. But yeah, I think our fourth is way better than our first. Our fourth is way better than our first.
Oh, shoot.
That's interesting. I'm figuring out.
The fourth kid definitely doesn't have the same